In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you.
Damn, I can't see shit through this fog.
So I recently finished playing through Silent Hill 2 for the first time, and by recently I mean literally days before I started writing the script for this video. I've been putting it off for a while, but when the remake came out, I figured I had to find out what all the hype was about, and before I knew it, that game consumed my entire being. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Granted, I'm like that with most things I consume.
This is the best thing I have ever read in my entire life.
Silent Hill 2 first came out in 2001 on the PS2, and let's not beat around the bush, it's showing its age. The combat is clunky, the puzzles can be obtuse and confusing, and the voice acting is...
Wait! How do you know Mary's name?
But despite these flaws that I will touch on a bit later, the game still holds up really well. The story is engaging, the world pulls you in, and the atmosphere is simply unmatched. The shit Team Silent was able to achieve on such limited hardware compared to today's is still nothing short of impressive. Hell, even Silent Hill 1 still holds up in my opinion, even though Harry looks like he was carved out of stone by a Homo erectus.
I thought I was playing Silent Hill, not fucking Turok. Why are there pterodactyls flying around? What is happening?
And now, 23 years later, in the year of our Lord 2024, an official remake was released, developed by Bloober Team, a Polish game dev studio. I'm only mentioning that part because I'm also Polish and felt I needed to brag a little bit. So now the real question arises. Which version is better? Did the new, modernized remake completely blow the original out of the water? Or does it not even compare to the 2001 masterpiece? Well, the answer is not that simple. That's what I want to talk about in this online YouTube video. I want to compare how both games do things differently, and how they both in their own ways serve the overall experience and story the games want to tell. And just a heads up, I'm going to try to avoid talking about heavy story spoilers for the most part, but I will touch on some themes and characters later, so if you haven't played either of the games, I recommend you do so. I should also probably mention I haven't played the remake yet because I don't have a PS5 and my computer will probably explode if I tried playing it on it, but I have watched a full playthrough of the game and still found a lot of things I can talk about even without first-hand experience. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's start this little yap session with... If you've played any Silent Hill game, you'd know that the unnerving, mysterious atmosphere is the thing that makes the games what they are. The fog-covered town is basically its own reoccurring character, walking through the empty streets, accompanied only by the chilling ambience and whatever might be hiding in the mist just out of sight. The unending white void completely enveloping you. On the other hand, exploring the abandoned buildings feels claustrophobic. The long, empty corridors make you feel trapped. With each locked door, another escape route gets cut off, making you have to confront what might be waiting for you around the corner. That's the true Silent Hill experience, baby. Even the changing, fixed camera perspective makes you feel like you're being constantly observed by something without you being aware of its presence. I don't think I need to tell you that the original 2001 version nails this vibe completely. But how does the remake fare in comparison? Well, first of all, the higher capabilities of modern hardware allows for more little details that can help immerse you more into the world of the game, like stray pieces of paper flying through the wind, open windows letting through an ominous breeze, and just random trash scattered everywhere. It all makes the town feel more real, and with that, even more empty. The realistic graphics make you realize that you've been in this town before. Well, not Silent Hill specifically, but I think all of us have been in a place like it, walking through strangely empty streets, not a soul in sight. No? Just me? Oh. One thing I would also like to add is the remake is overall louder and more in your face than the original. There'll be moments where you're surrounded by a swarm of enemies you have to fight your way through. In the original, you'd be fighting at most like 2 enemies at a time. I guess your opinion on that depends on what kind of horror you like better. Oh my god, can you believe I almost forgot to mention the music? The soundtracks for both games were composed by Kira Yamaoka, and they're both absolutely amazing. Silent Hill's music has a very specific and recognizable style. You've actually been listening to it in the background of this video this entire time. Let's be honest, gameplay is probably the most important factor in determining whether a game is worth playing or not. If the game looks beautiful, but playing it feels like walking through shards of glass in scorching Arizona heat, while rabid dogs constantly nip at your Achilles tendon, the game is probably not very good. I mentioned the gameplay of the original Silent Hill 2 feels outdated by modern standards, but honestly it's really not that bad. The controls are kind of weird sometimes, but they're also simple, so it doesn't hinder your experience all that much. The combat is slow and kinda weird, but it serves to reinforce just how out of his depth our protagonist is. I mean, they might have the same barber, but he's not Leon Kennedy, alright? James Sunderland is one of many literally just a normal guy horror game protagonist, so he's not gonna be doing kickflips or combo attacks. All you've got is a 2x4, maybe some bullets and a kombucha to help you survive this nightmare. I was low on ammo and healing items through most of the game, so I really had to pick and choose when and how to use them. The remake, however, is a little bit different. It replaces the fixed camera angles with a regular over-the-shoulder 3D person perspective, something most gamers are probably used to. I mean, it's used in several Resident Evil games, The Last of Us, God of War, and most video games. Anyway, as cool as the fixed camera angles of the original can be at points, it's also pretty disorienting. You leave a room and suddenly you're all thrown around and you have to check the map around 7 times to make sure you're going in the right direction. With the over-the-shoulder cam, you can always see in front of you, so you don't get so confused all the time. On the other hand, however, it can also take away from the tension. In the original, when you hear a spooky noise, you have to deliberately look towards it, until the camera angle changes to see what kind of critter is waiting for you. In the remake, you can just look in the general direction and probably spot the leg mannequin tweaking at the end of a hallway. That's why the game uses a lot more jump scares. They're not completely random or annoying, because the claustrophobic environments keep you on your toes, because you know something could jump out at you from around the corner. Still, it is a different kind of horror than in the original version. When it comes to resource management, the remake seems to be a lot more merciful, at least on the standard difficulty. There's more places to explore, which means more places to find healing items and ammo. That being said, they're still fairly limited, so you won't be doomslaying your way through Brookhaven Hospital. When it comes to the combat itself, the core mechanics are pretty much the same as in the original, except you have manual aiming like in most games these days. While in the original, James would kinda just aim at the monsters for you, here you gotta have a good aim on you. The battles are also more fast-paced, which you might think would make you feel more in control, but if anything, the animations and James's grunts and yells make the combat feel erratic and panicky. It really makes you feel like you're desperately fighting for your life. You can also dodge attacks, which is nice because getting vomited on constantly in the original game was pretty annoying. Strangely, the combat in the remake is actually closer to how it was in Silent Hill 1, and I don't know why more of the mechanics weren't brought over to the sequel. Both it and its remake do combat differently, but they still work well for what they're trying to achieve. And since we're talking about combat, I want to compare the boss fights. In the original, the boss fights kinda suck. Well, the designs and the relations to the plot are all amazing, they're just not really fun to play at all. They all just boil down to running from one end of the small room to the other, shooting a couple of times and then running back again. Needless to say, it's really not difficult to improve on them. They made the arenas more interesting with obstacles and added some more mechanics to the various bosses to make them more unique and interesting. That being said, they're still not the most exciting fights in gaming history, at least from what I've seen. Puzzles are a big part of the original game, and by puzzles I mean some real brain teasers, not take item A and put it into hole B. You're gonna be solving riddles, looking for ciphers, and okay, you're still gonna be putting many objects into contraptions and your hands into shit-filled toilets.
Oh, James, what did you do that? There wasn't even any indication there was something inside of it. You just did that.
In the remake, you'll find some of the original puzzles, as well as completely new ones that still feel like they'd fit really well into the original game. I will say the remake does a pretty good job at guiding you towards the solutions without spelling them out to you. God of War. Well, who said that? This is actually pretty nice because I did have to open up a walkthrough a couple of times only to find out I missed some random item in some random room. Though that could just be me being stupid, I don't know. Last thing I wanted to mention in regards to gameplay is the UI. The original Silent Hill games have a very memorable and iconic menu style. The scrolling items and sound effects are pretty iconic. Admittedly, it can get pretty annoying having to open your inventory to use a healing item or switch between weapons. But I mean, just listen to these sounds. The remake, however, uses a much more minimalistic and modern UI. While it doesn't slow down the gameplay like its predecessor, it also just lacks that charm. I guess that's more of a complaint about modern video games in general. Today's UIs just have zero sauce. Except Elden Ring. Mwah. This is the part where it's gonna be difficult to avoid talking about spoilers, so I guess this is your final heads up. Silent Hill 2 follows the story of James Sunderland as he travels through the mysterious resort town of Silent Hill looking for his wife, who despite apparently being dead for 3 years has sent him a letter telling him to come find her. As you explore the town, you start to experience its mysterious reality-bending properties. Along the way, you will meet some characters who, just like James, have been called into this town for one reason or another. The outdated graphics combined with the awkward voice acting make these encounters feel uncanny and unnatural, like they're people that don't quite know how human interactions work. You may even start to suspect James is not quite who he appears to be. Now you might think that with the more detailed graphics and different voice actors that feeling would be lost, but that's not entirely true. The way the dialogues are written and the cutscenes are directed subtly hint that all these people you meet all hide some kind of darkness within them. One real cool detail I noticed was when you meet Eddie for the second time in the original game, he's munching on some za and James goes,
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
It's kind of a silly moment that gets a bit sadder after you learn more about his character, but in the remake, James finds him shoveling ice cream into his mouth and says to him offhandedly,
At least you got your appetite back.
Eddie doesn't answer him. Instead, he gives James this slight, suspicious look. Later in the story, you learn Eddie is a victim of severe bullying and that for him, Silent Hill isn't full of grotesque monsters, but people constantly laughing at him wherever he goes. So you realize that look he gave James because he suspected the one normal person he came across in this town is also trying to ridicule him, which is pretty darn tragic. There's actually a silly little callback to the original scene in the bowling alley later on. There's actually a lot of little references to the original game, like Maria's original outfit. It's kind of cute. Next is Angela, arguably the most tragic character in the game. It's very heavily implied she has suffered horrible sexual and physical abuse at the hands of her father, which turned her into a timid and wary person. The first time you meet her in the remake, near the beginning of the game, if you look really closely you can notice her fingernails are pretty chewed up, likely resulting from stress. Not some pretty insane attention to detail. It's with these subtle things that the remake substitutes what the original could achieve with the uncanny nature of that era's horror games. I mean, good luck trying to put chewed up fingernails on those PS2 models. Maria also got some interesting treatment in the remake. Maria is a mysterious woman James meets in a park in the town, which used to be his and his wife's special place. The funny thing is, Maria looks and sounds exactly like his wife, Mary. Boy, I wonder what could be going on there. Anyway, Maria gets more screen time this time around and has a lot more to say, but they still manage to keep that mysterious air about her. Like sometimes she'd say some out-of-pocket thing, or how despite being around all the time, she never actually does anything, which normally would be pretty annoying for a video game companion, but here, it could hint at who or what Maria could really be. Spooky. Then there's Laura. I don't really have a lot to say about her, she's pretty much the same as in the original, but I do appreciate that she still calls James a fart face. I was debating whether to talk about this next thing in the atmosphere section, but I think it fits here better because now we're talking about the monsters. The enemies in Silent Hill games have a lot of thematic and narrative significance, so I feel like they're almost characters in their own way. In Silent Hill 2, there's only a handful of kinds of monsters you'll find, and they all relate somehow to James's broken psyche and how he chose to cope with the death of his terminally ill wife. For example, the lying figures resemble a body bag with feminine legs sticking out, which could be symbolic of his wife's fate, as well as his sexual frustration, which also reappears in the designs of the leg mannequins and the bobblehead nurses. In the original game, the monsters looked like twisted lumps of flesh without a clear beginning and end. They felt like something you would actually see in your own nightmare. They're borderline incomprehensible, which just makes them scarier. Even the way they move is jittery and unnatural. In the remake, however, while being pretty faithful to their original appearances, their more detailed and more readable models kind of take away from that, which is a shame. They don't look bad by any means, they're still cool, just not that scary to me. Except for Pyramid Head, he is and will always be perfect. Okay, I think I said more words in this video than I have in the last 3 months combined. Anyway, what was the point of this video again? I forgot. Oh yeah, I just thought it was interesting how game design philosophies and video games in general have changed over the years, and I thought Silent Hill 2 and its remake have some pretty interesting examples of that. To me it feels like the 2024 remake really is what Silent Hill 2 would have been if it was made today. My goal in this video wasn't to tell you one is better than the other, but to hopefully show you that both have their good and bad sides. They both tell the same stories, just in slightly different ways. The remake is faithful while also modernizing some of the outdated mechanics that can be pretty frustrating to modern gamers, though I wouldn't say it's the superior new version of the original. I've heard there's some performance issues as well as some awkward camera controls that hold it back from being even better than it already is. All in all, I guess whichever version you prefer depends on what you're personally looking for in video games. And I hope the success of the remake means we get more Silent Hill things in the future. That'd be pretty cool. Hi, if you're listening to this, I just wanted to say thanks for watching this entire video. I'm recording this little message right after I finish editing it, and it took way longer than I thought it would. But it was fun and I like talking about things that interest me, so I wanna keep making more videos like this. And if you're a new viewer, you might also see that I've been doing live streams on this channel, so maybe consider sticking around and hang out with me while I play some cool little video games. Anyway, I guess that's all I wanted to say. I'll catch you later. God, I'm so tired.